Hi friends, we at GLC would like to take a quick moment to thank you for watching our programs on this platform, and we'd like to ask you for a little favor. Would you please go beneath this video and click the subscribe button? Did you know that by simply subscribing to the GLC YouTube channel, you can help us financially support the programs on this platform? You'll need to be signed into YouTube beforehand, but if not, simply click the subscribe button and YouTube will automatically walk you through the steps to sign in or to create an account. By taking these simple steps, you will not only ensure that you continue to receive our unique programming and gain instant access to the hundreds of videos we post, but more importantly, you'll also be telling YouTube that GLC's content is worth watching and promoting. Likewise, if you enjoyed a specific program, please click the thumbs up button below, which also helps inform YouTube that this is a program worth recommending. Finally, once you have logged in and subscribed, please click the notification bell below in order to receive announcements when we post new content. As usual, feel free to post your questions and comments in the comments section below. We always love hearing from our friends and viewers. Again, thank you for watching and supporting God's Learning Channel. We couldn't spread the message of the gospel without you. Be blessed, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Shalom, welcome back to our continuing series. This is Brad Scott with the Wild Branch Ministry. I guess we finished that part. We're now kind of moving on to the same kind of idea of talking about these verses and sections of Scripture that are traditionally brought up to somehow prove that these things have been done away with. And so now we're going to kind of shift to Yeshua, which is rarely done. Some of you are well aware that the fact that many times when you're caught trying to obey God, that one of there's a series of things that are brought up all the time, mostly starting with Paul. Well, didn't Paul say, once again, is somehow that Paul's supposed to trump the Messiah? But when they do mention the red words of the New Testament, if you will, the things that Yeshua says, generally it's the one about, well, it's not what goes in the mouth or in the stomach, it's what comes out of the stomach that defiles a man. And so they're referring primarily to, I'm going to use the one in Mark chapter 7, but the several accounts of this given in the Gospels basically and fundamentally says the same thing. As a matter of fact, the Mark one's probably more hard to understand than some of the others if you don't read it in context. And so before I get into the background or the context of Yeshua's remarks, which once again, you don't have to have any kind of knowledge of Hebrew at all. You don't even really have to understand the culture of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, which quite frankly is a big help in other areas that we've been talking about. It does help to understand the culture behind the things that the people are doing and saying. But this one's so abundantly obvious, I don't even know why specifically we need to address this, but it's brought up all the time. And I can't, this is one of the ones that's brought up to me in the past under certain scenarios where you find yourself, maybe some of you can relate to this. When you're first walking this walk, and one of the first things that you have to deal with, and sometimes it's very scary, is you're going to go out with some of your, quote, religious friends that you hung out with before. Let's suppose that you've left the traditional church that you're in or whatever system is in, and you're walking according to the commandments, you're trying to obey God and keep His festivals and so forth. And sooner or later, you're going to be asked to go out with a group of friends. And generally, there'll probably be those that you hung around with in your church before that. And one of the scariest things, I know this happened to me, so I'm trying to give you kind of a personal thing, and perhaps it's happened to you, one of the scariest things is you go out with your friends to a restaurant, and as you walk into the restaurant, there's a chalkboard. Sometimes when you walk into restaurants, they have the things that they're featuring, the meals that they're featuring for that day, written in chalk on a chalkboard. And I remember we walked into a restaurant, and there was about 8 of us, so there was like 4 couples going to this restaurant. And on the chalkboard, it was written stuffed pork chops. And I think they had it, I don't know what it was, but it was a decreased price for that day. And so immediately fear begins to sink in to my wife and I as we're walking into this restaurant because we know what's going to happen. We both already knew that that this subject's going to come up. And we're going to get into this big debate and this big argument, and we wanted to avoid that. As a matter of fact, many times we say to ourselves, now, as we go out with these people or we're going to a Christmas dinner with our parents and so forth, one of the first things we always say to ourselves is, okay, we're not going to bring up anything. We're not going to sit there and tell them this is a pagan festival or whatever. We're just going to go, and we're going to have a good time with our family or whatever. We're going to kind of ignore these things, and we don't bring anything up. But the reality is, your friends and your relatives that know that you don't do these things anymore, they're going to bring it up. They can't help it. It just comes flying out as soon as they can get it. So you can avoid it all you want. They're going to bring it up anyway. And so we knew there was going to be an argument. And so I'm concerned. So we get around the table, we'll all sit down, and we're having their water and whatever, and they come for the drinks, and then they come around and ask for what everybody's order is. And just like we thought, starting on the other side, I'll have the special, I'll have the special, I'll have the special, I'll have the special. It comes to us, and we said, we will have a salad. And so as the waitress leaves, the first thing that comes up is, why are we only having the salad? Now, I'm going to submit to you, which we got into. I'm going to submit to you, if it would have gotten to us, and everybody ordered the pork chops, and when it got to us, we said that we're going to have the salad. And said, why are you only having the salad? Because we are on the Dr. Vinnie Boomba diet. Now, if we just said the Dr. Vinnie Boomba diet, everybody go, oh, you're on that diet too. Okay, well, whatever. Or if it had come back to us and we said, why are you only having the salad? Well, because the pork chops really bother my stomach. I have this problem with this thing on my side and whatever. Oh, I completely understand. Or if they would have gotten all the way around to us and we would have said, oh, we're having the salad because we're just really overweight and we really need to get away from the pork and all that kind of stuff because we need to lose a few pounds. Any one of those would have been okay. But when it comes around to you and they ask you why you're not having the pork chops, and you say, the scriptures say, all hell breaks loose at that point. I could have said anything I wanted, but the minute it has something to do with the scriptures, then the roof comes off the place when I say that. But I could have said anything else. And some of you can relate to what I just said. Because that's what starts the whole thing, is the fact that you are trying to follow the scriptures. And this is one of the things that it happens to be that night when we brought that up, that was the very first thing brought up to us is, well, doesn't the Bible say that it's not what goes in the mouth, in the stomach, but what comes out that he's talking about? And so how they interpret that to mean? That you can put anything you want in you, but it's the words that you say that's going to defile you, not the pork chops, not the unclean things, and so on and so forth. But let's go back and actually read the account first, and let's come back and talk about this for just a few minutes in this program. I'm going to read Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 23. So bear with me because it bears repeating that we read this section of Scripture. Get the context. Then came together unto him the Pharisees and certain of the scribes which came from Jerusalem. Now, automatically know the background of the Pharisees and the scribes. What have they done? They've added to the commandments and they've taken away from the commandments. And this has been over and over and over again. And when they saw some of his disciples, that is Yeshua, eat bread. Now notice they're not eating shrimp, they're not eating scallops and so forth. They're eating bread with defiled, that is to say, unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, except they wash their hands off, eat not, holding the tradition of the elders. So what's the context? The fact that Yeshua's disciples were not eating according to the traditions of the Pharisees. They were eating their food, not holding the traditions of the elders. And he says, and when they came from the market, except they wash, they eat not. And many other things there be, which they have received to hold, as the washing of cups and pots and brazen vessels and of tables. None of this which is in the Torah. This whole concept of washing the two-handled pot and so on and so forth, none of that is in the Torah at all. It's not even a doubtful disputation, which we covered earlier. Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, saying, why do you not doing the things that we do? Same kind of thing that went on at the table in the restaurant. by the other religious system that say, why you're not eating the stuffed pork chops? Why are you not doing what we are doing? Same kind of question. And he says, why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? So they're talking about bread. He answered and said unto him, well has Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. This is the same subject that Paul deals with consistently as well. The difference between the Torah and his commandments and the traditions of men. This is what Paul always has to deal with. Laying aside the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men. So what's the commandment of God? These things are clean, these things are unclean. So we throw that out to the side and replace it traditionally with the things that we want to do, because stuffed pork chops is a very common tradition in America. And he says that full well ye reject the commandment of God, that ye may keep your own tradition. For Moses said, honor your father and your mother. Whoso curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, if a man shall say to his father or mother, it is Corban, that is to say a gift, by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, he shall be free, and you suffer him no more to do aught for his mother or father, making the word of God of none effect through your tradition, which ye have delivered, and many such things like ye do. Because they were doing the same thing when it came to to their offerings in the temple. Some of the unbiblical offerings that they brought to the temple, as a matter of fact, was taking precedence over the commandment of honoring the mother and the father. So the tradition, okay, were these gifts that they brought in the temple at certain times, and then the commandment was to honor your mother and father. And so they were taking the things that they needed to do to take care of their parents, and they were taking it down to the temple. The same kind of things going on. And when he had called all the people unto him, he said unto them, hearken unto me every one of you, and understand, there is nothing from without a man that entering into him can defile him, but the things which come out of him, those are those that defiled the man. Now the context about there isn't anything that goes in you is those who had to wash their hands in this ritual washing that they had to do. That's the context of it. We're going to come back and talk about it in more detail. And he says, if any man has ears to hear, let him hear. Same kind of thing that's said in Revelation chapter 2 and 3 when the Spirit says unto the churches. And when he has entered into the house from the people, the disciples ask him concerning the parable. And he says, are you without understanding also? What did I just tell you? What just happened here? Can't you understand this? Do you not perceive that whatsoever thing from without entereth into the man, it cannot defile him? Now, is he talking about all things, or he's talking about the context of what he just went through? So in other words, let me ask you something I brought up before. Does plutonium harm a man? Does eating these kind of things, is that what he's saying? It's okay for you to eat these things now? Because if you're going to conclude that he's saying anything that goes in you will not defile you, then you would have to include uranium and plutonium and various chemicals and things, radiation and so on and so forth, diesel fuel, okay? Take your pick on any one of a number of things. Obviously, he's not talking about anything. There's a context to this. Because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth out into the drought, purging all meats. That which cometh out of the man, that which comes out of the man is what defiles the man. For from within, out of the heart of man, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornication, murders, and so on and so forth. And he goes on. Now, once again, let's talk about this thing a little at a time. In verses 1 through 3, he said, eat bread defiled, and that is to say with washing hands. And if you've ever been to Israel, you know what I'm talking about. You go into many of the restaurants, go into some of the bathrooms, especially some near the Western Wall, if you've ever been there, and there's these two-handled pots in there. Of course, they've been handled by everybody on the planet by now, but they had a two-handled pot. And the idea is that both handles are clean. And so you take them one at a time so your hands are never touching anything unclean. And to them, that in order, before you can sit down and eat your food, not before you can sit down and eat pork chops, before you sit down and have a meal, that you are to go through this ritual of the washing of your hands. That was the purpose behind it. And so that's the context of it, is the traditions of the elders. You can plainly see that. And so he goes on in 4 and 5 and says, now when they come from the market, except they wash, they eat not. Now he's not talking about washing your hands because they're dirty. I mean, we do that in our culture. He's talking about this ritualistic washing that they went through, which if you did not do that, then the food was defiled and so forth, so you couldn't eat the food. He says, and many other things there be which they have received to hold. So he's saying, not only do we have this, we also have a lot of other things that the religions do that is part of their ritual and part of their traditions and so forth that they hold that are not of the Scriptures either. So it's not just the ritualistic washing of hands and cups. He says, then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, why you're not doing these things according to the traditions of the elders, but you eat bread with unwashed hands. So once again, they're eating bread. I know that I'm being a little redundant here, but I want to get the point across that we can't just, when something happens, just throw up these flags and say, but it's not what goes in the mouth, as if that ends the discussion without bringing it back into the context of things. And so 7 through 9, he says, in vain they do worship me, teaching the doctrines, the commandments of men, and not the commandments of God. Once again, the comparison was the korban, if you will, the gift or the offering versus the commandment of honoring your mother and father. And so Yeshua basically says to them that these people that hold this thought, that why aren't you doing it according to the way we do it, they are rejecting the commandment of God that they can keep their own tradition. I submit to you that the same thing is going on in the world in which we live in today, that we are convicting people and judging people over the traditions that we have come to understand in our culture, and meanwhile we are rejecting the commandments of God. So have the commandments of God changed here a bit? Is Yeshua referring to his commandments, or is he talking about the commandments of the elders? And then we read the whole thing about the korban and so on and so forth. And then he says in 14 and 15, once again I repeat, hearken unto me every one of you and understand, there is nothing from without a man that entering into him can defile him. He's not talking about everything. The context is food. Remember, they sat down to eat bread. And so he's simply saying the bread's not defiled, if you will, and defiles you when it goes in because you didn't go through the ritualistic washing. The bread's not defiled. As a matter of fact, he goes on a little bit later here and he says, are you so without understanding? Do you not perceive? And he's really going to start to get into something that we understand now with respect to how our bodies work, because the Father has designed our bodies so perfectly. He's such a good God, a wonderful God. He knows exactly what he's doing when he designed our body, and the function of our intestines and all the things that are involved in the processing of food within us is designed that when you eat the food, not when you eat unclean things, see, that causes problems from within. But when you eat the things that he designed to be clean, to be eaten, food, in this case, it's bread. Your body is brilliantly designed by our God that when you eat these things and you put them in your mouth, that they go through the process of dividing out the fibers and they take the minerals and so forth out of the bread or whatever clean thing they're eating, whether it be the meat or the vegetables or the kumquats or the tomatoes or whatever. And your body has this brilliant way of processing this inside of you, and it takes all the nutrition and minerals from these things and sends it to the various organs of the body and through the blood system and so forth to cause you to have strength and vitality in your life. And then it takes basically the fibrous part of it and sends it out the drought. And so Yeshua is referring to that in Mark 7, 18 and 19 when he says, do you not perceive that whatsoever thing from without entereth in the man, it cannot defile him? Then in other words, this food you're eating doesn't defile you because of unwashed hands, because it enters not into the heart. Food doesn't go into the heart. Food goes into a stomach system, if you will, that processes it. It says it goes into the belly and it goes out the drought, purging all food. It doesn't say purging the shrimp or purging the stuffed pork chops for the day. It's a word used in Hebrew to describe, or in Greek to describe food, not unclean things, not common things, but food. And so that's the way your intestinal system is designed, to purge out all these things. In Matthew, in Matthew, he says, for out of the heart precedes evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witnesses, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. Now we need to be clear about this because that's the subject of what Yeshua is talking about. It's food that when it goes in the stomach, that it's going to come out the drought, and he's designed to separate it. Now, one of the things that I want to do is take you over to the book of Acts. Let's go on over to the book of Acts. And we may have to finish this one next time. But we've got a few minutes here. Let's go into the famous verse in the book of Acts where Cornelius sees a vision. Peter's vision of the sheep that's talked about it. As a matter of fact, I think we can go through this very briefly, and then we'll get into something else next time. The context of this is very clear. The vision starts out, there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band, a devout man, one that feared God with all his house, and so on and so forth. And he saw a vision. He had a vision about the 9th hour of the day. And an angel of God coming into him and saying to him, Cornelius. And when he looked at him, he said, what is it? And he said unto him, your prayers and your alms have come up to me for a memorial before God. And now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter. Now, if you remember, they're going to go get Peter now. Now, Peter is at the hour of the day where he's hungry. And it says in verse 10, he became very hungry and would have eaten. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance. He saw heaven open and a certain vessel descending unto him as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners and let down to earth. And in this sheet represented all of the earth, because the four, when you see the word four or four corners, it's speaking of the four corners of the earth. So he's saying this sheet is going to go out throughout all the earth. Remember, the gospel is going to go out throughout all the earth. And when it comes down, there's all manner of four-footed beasts in the earth and wild beasts and creeping things and fowls of the earth. Now, in other words, the image that's going to be portrayed here is that we're going to go out to all the lost sheep scattered throughout and mixed throughout all the Gentiles, out all the earth, mixed among the clean mixed with the unclean. So these things are all mixed up together. Clean and unclean, heathen, Jew, Gentile, the multitudes, the masses is going to be the point of this whole thing. Why do we know it doesn't have anything to do with food? Because he says, rise, Peter, kill and eat. And Peter says, not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. Now, what does that tell you right off the bat? That this whole time Yeshua was with the other disciples in the presence of Yeshua in his whole ministry, Peter's letting you know that he did not eat anything uncommon. So in other words, he just told you the whole time he was with Yeshua, nobody ever ate anything common or unclean or any such thing. So 3 times he gives us the vision, and 3 times Peter says, no, I'm not going to do that. So first of all, Peter doesn't do it. Second of all, he reveals that he didn't do it when he was a Messiah either. And the third one is that he doesn't get it yet. He doesn't, I mean, what's wrong with him according to the common interpretation? Can't you see that he's trying to tell you it's okay to eat the unclean things now? What's the matter with you, Peter? What, is Peter a dummy? No, Peter doesn't get it. Why? It contradicts the scriptures. That's why he doesn't get it. The Father's trying to teach him something else is the point. And so Peter's not going to rise up. He doesn't eat this thing. And he says this was done 3 times in verse 16, and the vessel was received up again into heaven. Now, while Peter doubted in himself that what this vision was and what it should mean, behold, the men that were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house and stood before the gate. Peter doesn't know anything about these men coming to him to take him to Cornelius. Before this happens, the Father knows that these men are coming to take Peter to a man, a person. Men are able to choose. Animals and plants are not. Like kind begets like kind. But we are originally created in the image of God, have the ability to choose, where pigs don't have a choice. Pigs can't choose whether to serve God or be clean or unclean. They are unclean, and they've always been unclean. That's why Yeshua sends the demons unclean into the pigs. Like kind goes into like kind. Nothing's changed here. And so, but Peter doesn't know anything about this yet. So preceding this, the Father's going to give us a vision, give him a vision, knowing that when he goes to see Cornelius, he's going to put it together. as to what the vision was all about. That it really had nothing to do with the dietary laws or eating unclean things. That wasn't the point. And so it goes on to say that, arise therefore and get thee down in verse 20 and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. And so Peter went down to the men which were sent unto him from Cornelius and said, Behold, I am he whom you seek. What is the cause wherefore you have come? And they said, Cornelius the centurion, a just man, and one that fears God, and of good report among all the nations of the Jews, was warned by God by a holy angel to send for you into this house and to hear the words of you. So now Peter knows. Now Peter knows that there is a man, that he's going to go see a man. Now he's going to start to put the vision together using common sense in what he's told. And he called them in and he lodged with them. And on the morrow, Peter went away with them, and certain brethren from Joppa accompanied him. And on the day afterward, they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius waited for them, and he had called together his kinsmen and his friends. And as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet to worship him. A mistake that's made all throughout the scriptures. You worship God only. And of course, Peter takes him up and says, Stand up, because I am a man like unto you are. And he talked with them, and found many that were together. And he said unto them, Ye know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come into one of another nation. Now, is that what the Torah says? No. That was the teaching of Judaism at the time. So he's talking to this crowd that's together. And he's saying, you know, not based upon the Torah, because the Torah doesn't say you can't keep company with these people. The Jewish tradition said that. And that's the reason why Peter is given this vision. He says, But God has showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. So once again, as you can see the context, which we seem to leave out of this all the time, and I know most of you are already aware of this, but the context is now Peter gets it. Because he had no knowledge before that there were men coming to get him, to take him to a man, a Gentile, called Cornelius. Because according to traditional Judaism, which his disciples were raised in, that you did not associate with that which is unclean. But because Cornelius chose to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Father has come into his life and made him clean again. Only people can do that. And so he's trying to teach Peter, contrary to what your religious system that you were raised in says, if I have called him clean, do not call him unclean, because I have changed Cornelius' life. And so Peter finally gets the vision, because he never eats these unclean things. And he realizes, my goodness, we're not talking about pigs. We're not talking about pork chops. We're not talking about any of those things. We're talking about what the Father is doing with human beings in the world. And we need to receive the fact that the Father has always been faithful to His Word from the very beginning. He's never forsaken His commandments. He's never forsaken His dietary laws, because He loves us and He wants us to live life to the fullest and not to be sick and filled with these various diseases. And so next time we're going to continue this thought pattern as we continue on. And in the meantime, cling to your roots that your days may be long and you will prosper in everything you set your hand to do.